Hello and welcome. I'm Shalini Verma. It's all in the genes. Yes, genes play an important role in determining physical traits, how we look, and lots of other things about us. This is true of all living organisms, plants included. The genetic makeup of an organism is its genome, which in all plants and animals is made of DNA. The genome contains genes, regions of DNA that usually carry the instructions for making proteins. It is these proteins that give the plant its characteristics. For example, the color of flowers is determined by genes that carry the instructions for making proteins that produce the pigments that color its petals. Genetic modification of plants. Well, that involves adding a specific stretch of DNA into the plant's genome, giving it new or different characteristics. This could include changing the way the plant grows or making it resistant to a particular disease. The new DNA becomes part of the genetically modified plant's genome, which the seeds produced by these plants will contain. The subject of genetic modification is much debated in India and other countries. The debate is centered around the viability of this technique, its utility, health, and ecological impact. In the show today, we look at all these aspects of genetically modified crops. And joining me in the program is Dr. H.S. Gupta. He is former DG, Borlaug Institute for South Asia, and he's also former Director, Indian Agricultural Research Institute. I'm also joined by Professor N. Raghuram. He's Chairman, International Nitrogen Initiative, and also Professor and former Dean, School of Biotechnology, Guru Gobind Singh Indraprasth University. Welcome to the program. Well, I'd like to begin the discussion with you, Dr. Raghuram. Why genetically modified crops? This is an issue which is being debated in India as well as other countries. How do you see this debate placed in the present time in our country?
Well, this has two answers. One part of your question is about why genetically modified crops, because before that you have to ask why crops in the first place. So as human population grows, you need food, and humans have domesticated many plants which were not born to become human food. They tried their level best not to become human food. Okay, so variants which were more convenient for human consumption, safer for human consumption, have been picked up, cultivated, and became for food. So everything that we consume today is actually a genetic variant of what exists in the wild, and made or selected through human intervention. So nothing that we consume today is actually anything wild at all. Mm-hmm. So there are natural modifications that have happened through mutation, environmental impacts, and we have selected them, our farmers have selected through millennia, and we accepted them and we are going. What now we are doing in the name of genetic modification is simply hastening that process by using precision tools available in the lab, and yet we cannot do entirely based on the lab tools. We still need some information from the field, mm-hmm. what we call the phenotype.
Okay.
So these are not completely exclusive, non-overlapping domains. Mm-hmm. Genetic modification cannot be done without the knowledge of the field conditions and the phenotype of the plants. And fast-paced crop improvement cannot be done only by the age-old techniques of breeding selection, which take centuries to improve.
So basically the reason that has often been quoted is that we need to drastically increase our produce.
Exactly.
Because we have to feed about, let's say, 10 billion people by 2050. And one of the ways would be to have genetically modified crops in this country, or for that matter, in other countries. But Dr. Gupta, this concept is about, what, 23 years old? 2.5 decades is what we have spent in understanding, in experimenting with GM crops. How has been our experience?
Almost. It was first genetically modified crop was released in US in 1996. So it's almost 22 years is completed, this is 23rd year. Mm-hmm. And today, almost around 17 million farmers are cultivating around the world, and the acreage is 189.8 million hectare. So you can imagine the magnitude people have adopted.
How does it reflect in India?
Well, in India it's around 11.4 million hectare, and in India we have only cotton. Cotton is the only genetically modified crop.
BT cotton is the only one that
which has been released. Other crops unfortunately have not been released, and the dividend from this BT cotton has been tremendous, which if you want me to quantify, it has been almost 140,000 crore since BT cotton was released in 2002. So from 2002 to 2016, it is $21 billion. And during 2016, let's take, this was for 2002
period.
2016. Now in 2016, $1.5 billion US dollar, and that comes to around 10,000 crore.
What have been our reservations about including or expanding the scope of GM in our country?
Well, major reservation has been the people have been telling that adequate biosafety measures have not been taken. But if you see, in the contrast, if you see, I think our biosafety measures are much stricter as compared to other countries. And we are no less than that. All the extensive testing, everything is done. See, a scare is being created or has been created by the so-called activists who are anti-GM. But well, scientifically, you see, as you said in the beginning of your talk, that 22 years have passed and globally no adverse effect has been pointed out.
There are potential risks, they say, about on health, on ecology, and these are the concerns which have been often pointed
There
out.
are few things which people tell. One is loss of biodiversity. Biodiversity, otherwise also when green revolution was ushered, I mean we have green revolution, then only varieties which were really dwarf, they were cultivated, and the biodiversity, those farmers varieties were kept in store and they were well preserved.
Okay.
Many of the farmers have continued to grow land races, local varieties, but only in certain areas these were preferred and they were grown.
And the fact that there are differences between the GM technology and other plant breeding techniques. There had been, as I said in the beginning too, an ongoing debate on the viability of the genetic engineering, genetically modified crops. We'll continue the discussion. Time for a very short break.
India Science is an internet-based science TV channel initiated by the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, implemented and managed by Vigyan Prasar. India Science on the URL www.indiascience.in is a bilingual channel with content in Hindi and English. It can be accessed on any internet-enabled device. This video platform is dedicated to science and technology knowledge dissemination with a strong commitment to spreading scientific awareness, especially with Indian perspectives, ethos and cultural context. The India Science mobile app can be downloaded from the Google Play Store and Apple Store.
Welcome back. The GM crops were first introduced in the US in the mid-1990s. Most current GM crops grown in the US are engineered for insect resistance or herbicide tolerance. Soybean, corn and cotton are the three largest acreage GM crops. Interestingly, most of the research on GM crops has been carried out in developed countries, mainly in North America, Latin America and Europe. While many developing countries have established the capacity for genetic engineering, they lack the scientific infrastructure to assess the biosafety of GM crops, the economic expertise to evaluate their worth, the regulatory capacity to implement guidelines for safe deployment, and the legal systems to enforce and punish transgressions in law. Now, one of the important things is to see that how does the GM technology differ from other plant breeding techniques? And in that we find the answer as to why we need GM technology. Dr. Raghuram.
Okay. In the conventional crop improvement techniques, you basically choose different variants of the same crop, what we call cultivars or genotypes, and you breed them. They are capable of natural breeding. At the most, you assist that breeding, and then you generate the hybrids or you screen for the the next generation. So, but this breeding is done within the natural reproductive barrier within the same species. So, different ecotypes or cultivars of the same species. But the gene pool available of various improvements within the same species may sometimes be limited. Sometimes you may have a very powerful inducer of a gene in a bacterium or a virus, and you bring it to the plant and make it express more. This is what GM basically does. It just brings all the elements from different organisms across reproductive barriers, assembles everything together to deliver the expected benefit, whatever that benefit is.
And one of the things about, as I said in the beginning, the potential risks of GM crops. Now, the things which have been presented by the other side has been that there's a danger of unintentionally introducing allergens, likelihood of transgenes escaping from cultivated crops into the wild relatives, also the risk of these toxins affecting the non-target organisms and things like that. How should one see these risks? There are also health concerns, but what about these risks?
Okay, so at least the risks that you have mentioned are real and acknowledged, they are there in the literature, and this is why the biosafety assessment of every transgenic crop or genetically modified crop is done before it is accepted or rejected for commercial cultivation. If there was no risk, there would not have been a requirement for a biosafety assessment. So, if you have a robust biosafety assessment system, these risks can be addressed, and on a case to case basis they can be accepted or rejected. But to say that the risks are not there would be denying the obvious. For example, the risk of contamination of the transgene with the wild is now textbook knowledge. Every major crop known to be genetically modified anywhere in the world has a record of escape of the transgene or a cross fertilization with its wild relative.
And what are our experiences with BT cotton cultivation?
Cotton is very much a cross pollinated crop. If there are wild relatives nearby, it will cross pollinate, and there is a law regulation that makes it necessary for the farmers to have a buffer area of non-BT relative of the same crop around the BT crop. But how much the farmers are following and how much the government is able to enforce, these are all as good as any other regulation.
So when the biosafety measures, as you said, they are part of the regulatory framework, isn't it?
Yes, of course.
They are.
Yeah.
Which and you know, US has its own regulatory structure. Compare it to that in the developing countries. Now that's an interesting thing, Dr. Gupta. I'd like you to please elaborate a bit more on the stand that the developed nations and the developing nations have had on the issue of GM crops.
See, as we were discussing why GM crop is required, it's naturally that population is growing, and if currently around 7.6 billion, is going to be 10 billion by 2050. So how do we feed? With conventional plant breeding we may not be able to feed, and also with only biotechnology we may not be able to feed. So it's a combination of both which will enable us to feed the world. That's the one. Now, coming to developed and developing nations perception, you see, nature has already been doing genetic engineering. As Professor Raghuram said, nature has been doing evolving. You know, today what we have, wheat and rice, they all have evolved from wild relatives. We have selected. So it's nature has been doing genetic engineering, but nature has been doing it slowly. The pace has been slow. Whereas when the scientists do it, we have tools and techniques available which you can do it fast.
But what about the economic viability too of these things?
Right.
Because after all, we know that GM is not an inexpensive technique,
right.
And you said that there has to be a good mix of conventional as well as modern technology, techniques, but we really do not see that happening on the ground, because after all we are doing away with the conventional style of farming or agriculture. We are living in the new era where you have new names. We either have smart technology, smart agriculture, climate smart agriculture, a number of other names,
right,
which we are introducing time and again. So what is it like? Is there clarity in our approach when we look to the future?
Yes, I think we are pretty clear about it. See, if you see the benefits of the GM technology, world over it has been accepted, and as I said in the beginning, around 17 million farmers have accepted 190 million hectare area, and for last 22 years they are being cultivated. Okay, so when you see that nothing adverse has been reported, nothing major like a loss of biodiversity, or there are cross-pollinated crops, there are self-pollinated crops. So adequate biosafety measure is taken so that it doesn't go out. Of course, in cross-pollinated crops there will be escapes, as Professor Raghuram said, but refugia is planted around that so that it takes care.
What about the concerns around health? They are often said that GM crops are not good for consumption.
Well, nowhere there is a report that it has got an adverse health. Health. I'll tell you one example. Say in US, it's being consumed, as you said, soybean, maize, cotton and
yes.
canola.
Yes.
So canola, maize and soybean are being consumed, and not even in US, even in India,
we are importing.
You see, we are importing.
Yes.
And we are producing BT cotton, so cotton oil also is there. So all that we are consuming, and wherever it has been released, there has been no report of any adverse effect on health. And prior to that, see, the tests are done.
There are reports that suggest that a high-level committee had submitted a report to the government in 2018 which said that nearly 15% of the cotton grown in India across Maharashtra, Telangana, Andhra Pradesh and Gujarat could be illegal, genetically modified, herbicide-tolerant cotton.
Yeah, this is a major problem. Actually, what's happening is, and this is really a writing on the wall, that all of us, whether you are pro-GM, anti-GM, neutral, open, closed, whatever, we need to worry about. There have been court cases when in the name of food aid, genetically engineered grain came and was at our shores when there were floods in Orissa, right? Till court intervened and stopped it, we were about to take them. Similarly, now you have a situation where some farmers organizations are actively pushing in defiance of the government's current position to go ahead and cultivate unapproved transgenic crops. Now, this is something that ought not to be done because it entirely makes a mockery of the very regulatory system that you are so proud of.
Is it the results that are really motivating the farmers? It is the crop yield, the amount of returns they are getting?
See, if you ask me, farmers in India are far more open-minded than anywhere else in the world.
Right.
They are interested in adopting any technology that makes a difference to their bottom line, that gives them sustainable yields and sustainable margins. Now, that requires 1,000 things to be done. GM is one of them. If you are not doing the remaining 999 things, GM will not and cannot do any wonders.
Okay,
so that's an important issue.
We'll take a very short break now in the program. Please stay tuned for more on the other side of this break.
India Science is an internet-based science TV channel initiated by the Department of Science and Technology, Government of India, implemented and managed by Vigyan Prasar. India Science on the URL www.indiascience.in is a bilingual channel with content in Hindi and English. It can be accessed on any internet-enabled device. This video platform is dedicated to science and technology knowledge dissemination with a strong commitment to spreading scientific awareness, especially with Indian perspectives, ethos and cultural context. The India Science mobile app can be downloaded from the Google Play Store and Apple Store.
Welcome back. The era of scientific crop improvement dates back to around 1900 when the impact of Gregor Mendel's studies on trait inheritance in peas became widely recognized. Since then, a broad range of techniques has been developed to improve crop yields, quality, and resistance to disease, insects, and environmental stress. Genetic modification of crops is seen as one such technique. The largest global acreage GM crops are soybean, corn, cotton, and canola in that order. The US has the greatest area of these crops, about 40% of the world total. Other large producers include Brazil, Argentina, Canada, and India. Now, one of the key things here is to see how farmers respond to this technique. After all, they are the ones who have to use it. And of course, we know about the consumer side of the story. But Dr. Gupta, how would you see or evaluate farmers' response in India?
See, our farmers have been very receptive of the new technology, be it a green revolution technology when it came in mid-60s, be it BT cotton. So today, BT, almost 95% of the cotton area is occupied by BT cotton. And if you see why is it so, then the answer is that the benefits, economic benefits. What has happened in India, India has been able to treble its cotton production since release of BT cotton, double farmers' yield, farmers' income, and India has become net exporter of cotton. India was not an exporter of cotton.
But at the same time, sir, it's been said that, we are also exporting, the sort of cash crops that we grow in our country.
Yeah.
And I remember 2 years ago, if I'm not wrong, there was the economic survey which said that we are almost exporting 1% of our water through these cash crops to other countries. So if that's the situation, and if we see farmers' distress also because of lack of water and our overdependence on cash crops, how do you see this story panning out in future, especially with regard to the climate change challenges that we face?
You see, water, there are certain areas because of agroclimatic conditions, they face drought. But if you see eastern India, is plenty of water. When one part of India has so much of water, other part of India you find there is a drought. So what we need to do, we need to manage it in such a way so that all parts of India gets water. And natural resources is soil, water, both are important.
Okay, there is this parallel thing about conserving our traditional seed varieties. How should one look at it, especially vis-a-vis the GM debate in our country?
See, ultimately for all genetic improvement, you need to know which genes are useful to improve.
Yes.
And to know which genes are useful to improve, you normally get to understand this from studying the diversity of available variants of the same gene in the collection of seeds available for a given species. So the more the germplasm, more the diversity, more the ideas hidden in those genes, which we only can uncover. We are not creating any new genes, not yet. But we are simply learning from what exists and bringing those desirable traits into one place and delivering it in a package. So this is another very big misconception that exists in society, that if you are looking at traditional biodiversity of rice, then you have to be anti-GM, or if you are doing GM, then you are essentially against the biodiversity. This is totally a misconception.
Okay.
In reality, biodiversity is the feedstock for biotechnology. It's the raw material for biotechnology.
How do you look at the agricultural research? The future of agricultural biotechnology is also important to reflect on, because we see that we have about 60 odd agricultural university and 100 plus public institutions where these researches are conducted. Do we have adequate infrastructure, enough experts and staff to take care of it? What is it that we need?
I think Professor Gupta is in a better position to answer that,
Right.
but I will just add one point before that to link with the previous question. That is, one major gene which has been improved by genetic modification is salt tolerance. The salt tolerance gene was not discovered in any of the normal high yielding varieties. It was discovered in one of the farmers variants
Okay.
in the biodiversity of rice grown in a region
Coastal
of Kerala,
area.
coastal area of
Fine.
Kerala.
Fine. Dr.
So-
Gupta, I'm sorry, I just
Yeah.
have 1 last minute left in the program. Very quickly, if you can please, speak something on the research that we need to do in order to.
You see, we are capable of, we have capacity, we have infrastructure and all that. Of course, not all the 70 agriculture university we have around 800 universities in the country. Not all of them don't have, but yes, majority of them have, and we can really make a difference. We can be self-sufficient on that. But I think India has to decide whether we are going to move forward with GM crop or we are not going to be.
Okay, I think the most important thing is information. We need to have debates and more discussions on this so that we are more aware about this technique and both the pros and the cons of this
Also
technique.
avoid binary traps, I would say.
Okay.
Be more nuanced and more selective trait to trait, crop to crop.
Okay. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining me in this program. Well, amidst a host of questions on GM crops, one thing remains clear. This technology, with its potential to create important crop varieties, comes with a bag full of concerns. The issues around it must be resolved and decisions must be based on credible, science-based information. Given the importance we place on the food we eat, policies regarding GM crops will have to be based on an open and honest debate involving a wide cross-section of society. You can send your feedback and share your views with us. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.